Hello, beautiful people. My name is Kristen. I appreciate you stopping by for my book reviews. It's probably one of my favorite videos to put together because I love talking about books. I will, as always, try to hold up each book as I speak about it. If there's a particular book that you're interested in hearing about, you can simply scroll along till you find that. If you like things bookish related, I try to put out a book related video every Wednesday. I also do a lot of fashion, lifestyle vlogs, all these kind of things. So whatever you're into, I hope that you will subscribe, stick around, and watch the videos that you're interested in. I appreciate especially those of you who take some extra time to comment. So it is my practice to read at least one classic a month, one nonfiction a month, a new release book once a month, and I am actually kind of hoping to even do a brand new author every month. And then whatever else I feel like reading, I will throw in there. Usually I read between 6 and 10 books a month. So I will start with my classics. I read the Grimm's complete fairy tale works. There is over 200 fairy tales and another 10 legends, I believe. So the first part of this collector's book, I actually picked this up at Costco, which is like Sam's Club in some part, or BJ's in some parts, one of those wholesale places. So I actually only paid like $15 for this beautiful copy. I think the original retail is $24.99, so that was a deal. And it actually has a pretty inside cover too. But it has a little intro about the life of the Grimm brothers. They grew up in Germany back in the time when, before the whole modern women owning property and all of those kind of issues were going on. So they grew up losing their mom and dad, who was the financial support, and then they lost their grandfather, I believe it was, who was then stepping up and taking care of them. And they had an aunt that was kind of a fairy godmother who would come along and kind of help bless them. And they did have one younger sister that was significantly younger, and they were very protective of her. So it was interesting, and all those things kind of play out. You kind of see that younger sister being protected. You have the fairy godmother kind of thing, and there's a lot of sense of, a lot of times the Grimm brothers are a little grim in the sense that people die, things don't always work out. But it's interesting because most of the times when there's a happy fairy tale ending, it has to do with romance. So just reading their lives, I'm not sure, they didn't say a whole lot about their marriages, right? But I'm assuming they must have at least had a love for romance. So these are the Cinderella. This is the stories of Rip Van Winkle. This is your Rapunzels. And another thing, and the backstory is, of course, if you read the original fairy tales, things are much more gruesome, such as the cutting off of the stepsister's feet, trying to get them in, and all that kind of stuff. And I never knew. I guess these are spoilers. I should tell you I'm spoiling some of these fairy tales, but I'm also assuming that my listeners know kind of the premise of the classics. Rumpelstiltskin, he, at the end, when she guesses his name, he slams into the earth and gets his foot stuck, so he slams his other foot and rips himself in two and kills himself. The version I saw, like cartoon, did not have that kind of ending. Just saying. So it was easy to pick this book up, read a couple short stories, and put it down, even though it was about a 600 and something page book. I'm talky today, so hopefully this is helpful information. I then read another classic this month, Virginia Woolf's The Waves. So I had heard a lot about Virginia Woolf and just her beautiful poetic writing, how much symbolism she puts in there, and honestly, some of the kind of more challenging reviews basically say, she can be over your head a little bit. And I can totally see that. I had to really stop and process as I was reading and trying to follow along and trying to figure out even what was happening. But basically, it really is a beautiful poetic verse writing style that basically follows 7 main childhood friends who are in school together. So we open up, and it took me a while to figure out that they were even talking about school. A lot of it goes back to nature. And so a little preview in between the sections talks about the ocean and about the time of day, about how the water is moving the sand, about how the breeze is coming in, about how the birds are coming in or out, and it progresses through the day. So you go from morning, and then at the very end, the sunset and it's dark. And then the story of the people goes from elementary school, goes into their summer, goes into their adolescence, goes into their adulthood, goes into their older age, and reflecting on life. And there's not necessarily death at the end, but it's the journey, it's the waves, it's the rhythms of life. And it's not, it's beautiful and poetic, but I don't have to spoil anything because there's not a lot of plot to spoil. The whole premise of it is really just the enjoyment of it. So if you're into that kind of slow chewing on the thing, and there are notes in the back talking about things that were going on historically speaking that she was maybe referencing. So if you like that kind of thing, check her out. If you're looking for some adventure or some more storyline, I would say this probably isn't the time or book to pick up. Nonfiction book, I read Four Fish, and this is talking about the four most popular, who's it by? Paul Greenberg, the four most popular fish commercially, like to buy. So you've got salmon, tuna, bass, and cod. And so it's like reading a documentary, but this book is way better than any book about four fish should be. He's a fisherman, the author's a fisherman, so he actually goes and kind of in a vlog style talks you through his experience with going out and trying to fish these fish, trying to give you the backstory on the history, explaining what they taste like, how they're marketed, what are the challenges of some of these fish. And it really opened my eyes to there's a lot of really tasty fish that are easier to keep from, being extinct or endangered, or, to keep them healthy, to keep them tasty good, to all that stuff. But because they're not known, or, nobody's going to go, oh, I'm going to go buy the hobby wobby fish, But if we were open to that, we'd all be better off. Does that make sense? Anyway, fascinating. I loved this book. I am going to gift this book forward to somebody that I think would really appreciate it. But if you have any interest in either food, like talking about the farm fresh versus the wild caught, great information. About health and foodiness, about the adventure. If you like watching The Deadliest Catch on, the TV, you might like this book. So that's what I have to say about that. Then I went on to new releases. So I've got two of my book of the month that are fairly new releases. I read Malibu Rising, Taylor Jenkins Reid, and I think I said in my preview before I read it that when I received the book that I thought this would probably be what I would want The Great Gatsby to be. And I think that's probably not a bad description. It's high drama. You have the main character is a woman hosting a party in her house that's like an annual tradition. She's like an older sister, and there's other siblings. They're all adults. They all have drama and backstories and things going on that are interesting. Their dad was a famous singer who divorced the mom, ran off with somebody, has all these kind of drug, sex, rock and roll background. We get to go back and hear some of his perspective and what's going on. We've got so you get the drama of the parents, how they influence the lives of the kids, what the kids are going through. There's romantic love triangles and all this kind of stuff. So on some points I would say this is almost silly, kind of campy, but I love it. I just absolutely, if you are ready for a break, just some silly, rompy drama, just characters that you really like, but, you don't have to be overly attached to a lot of heaviness, I say this book is all that. So that's what I'm going to say about that for now. The other one I read that was the new release this month was The Maidens. It's Alex I don't want to say this wrong, Michaelides? Nice word. This book I picked up because I was super drawn into the premise of a mysterious group of girls that center around English drama that have a private club at a college, and some of the girls start ending up missing and murdered, and it's a thriller, suspense, whodunit kind of situation. It was really good. I have not read his other book, is The Silent Patient, which got a lot of good reviews, and I am interested in reading that book, but I did not figure out all the twists and turns. I thought that this was very enjoyable, and I'm not the kind of person who likes a lot of graphic details and whatnot, and I thought the way this book handled the murders and the deaths definitely gave the details without being too explicit. So I give a huge thumbs up to this book. If you like thrillers, suspense, particularly if you like them around college campuses and family drama, it was a really good book. Next is my new author, or at least new to me. This is Job Tyler Leach. He contacted me and gave me this copy free of charge for my review, but it is an honest review. So it's called Wilting at Gin Mills. This is a bar story. So if you've watched me for a while, you know that like my favorite book of a year was 2 by 2 about a bar and a nonfiction documentary. So this kind of, particularly the first chapter, I adored. I just thought that, setting up a bar, everybody's getting together, that kind of Cheers mentality, people know your name and going to check in and have this story and this romp and this adventure, small town. I love that kind of thing. I love that setting for a story. And then the main story is kind of told through 3 main characters, really. You have the main character who is a friend, or kind of writing friendship between 2 other men who have opposing views, particularly politically. And so, when you're hanging out in a bar and drinking, things can sometimes get a little heated. And so that's kind of what the story premise was going around. And I would have liked, it's a pretty short book. So my only kind of negative or critique part of it would be, I would love to see this book a little thicker and have had even more backstory of the 2 characters that were so opposing, like dug into even more stories about why they think that way, and kind of how they're brought up to believe those things. And that's mentioned, but I would have liked even more, because I think those characters are actually very lovable, even though they can be very extreme. And I think in today's society, that if we knew each other's backstories and kind of understood the fullness, that's really what it's about, right? It's about understanding each other's perspectives. And the main character, George, who just has also dealing with becoming a widower and, talking to his wife and kind of bridging all of this and, thinking about all these situations that are going on. I think that was a beautiful story and deserves being told. So I love this book. I think it was really, really good. I'm almost positive it's available on Amazon. If I can find the link, I'll even drop it below for him. And I really appreciated reading this book and taking time to do that. I think he does a good job writing characters that you can get really attached to and relate to. Then, for a couple of funsy, I want to read this book. I have so many books I want to read right now. One of those, this is one that my son gave me for Christmas, and it's been waiting for like half a year, right? Along Came a Spider. Actually, I think he might have given this to me at Mother's Day, because I don't remember it hanging around that long. I think this was my Mother's Day. It was a gift. Along Came a Spider by James Patterson, because I had picked up the James Patterson at the library sale because I thought that I might like this new kind of mystery suspense author, and I wanted to try him out. But the one I ended up buying actually is a series or centers around a detective, Alex Cross, and I think this is supposed to be the one where that main character is introduced. So I haven't read the other one. I read this one, and this is really good. I really do like this author a lot. There was just a lot of complex issues going on. I really like how it tells the different first person perspective of several characters, and we're trying to get in their head to try to figure out who's really telling the truth and who's really not, and what are the motivations and all those kind. If you like those kind of mystery suspense, I do like this. It was borderline a little too graphic, but I can appreciate that when you're reading stories of this nature that there's going to be pushing the envelope for me. So really, really liked it. Absolutely going to read some more James Patterson, particularly around the Alex Cross character. What else should I tell you about this one? This is basically kind of cops versus FBI jurisdiction. There's some racial tension because at the beginning of the story, there is a cop who is passionately trying to go after the killer in the black neighborhood, and then a couple of wealthier white kids go missing, kidnapped. And so all of the attention and support goes to that. And of course, it all kind of ties back in at the end, because any really good story is creative that way. But that's the premise. So if you're a little squeamish about specifically kidnapping stories, that might not be the place to start. And then the last book I read and really enjoyed was Scythe. This is Neal Shusterman, and this is a young adult book, and it has been out for quite some time. There's actually a whole trilogy, I think maybe even more than trilogy, but this is the premise of a world that has advanced to the point of being so developed and perfect that we no longer have wars, we no longer have famine, that it's more than the cloud. Like, we have the cloud for information. There is a thunderhead that actually has gained some kind of awareness of itself and can actually revamp the temperature or the world. And so they don't even have governments, y'all. There's no governments. Everything is just, run correctly. But because of that, the population could just explode, right? Because nobody ever dies. And so, in fact, you can turn yourself and get younger even. They figured out like the whole aging problem. So there is a system of Scythe who come along and are human to begin with, and well, they don't become unhuman, but they become appointed, and they be kind of, cannot themselves be killed unless they decide to end their own life. And they are chosen to kind of population control. So it's a wrestling of how do you decide how you're going to do that? What do you base that on? And what is the process of that? And it's got a little flavor of Hunger Games, even because they take them as teenagers to kind of apprentice them into this scythedom. And it's just fascinating. There is a little bit of magic just in the it's not really magic, I guess it's high technology. It's like they have rings that grant immunity into the system. I think it's just such advanced technology that it's almost magical, because you're going through properties of overcoming death itself, right? So I love this. This is totally 5-star, and it's super easy because it's written on the young adult level. So totally recommend this. I just thought so much about it. I'd be like, oh, that's a really valid point, or, that's really interesting. And I just got, very, very attached to multiple characters in this. I just think it's super fun. And I don't own a copy of the second one, but it is now, I think the next book I will be buying will be that book if I can find it at a decent price, because it's older. So it should be out there, used copies, fairly, easy to get. So I recommend you pick it up if you find this, if particularly at a library sale or a used bookstore. Pick this one up. It's really, really good. So that is it. Those were the books I read this month. If you have read any of these books and want to give comment, please, if you're going to do spoiler, put the spoiler with the ... to warn people. If you are interested in reading one of these books now that I've talked about it, also leave me a comment. If you're reading another book that you, particularly if you think I would like to read it, drop that below so we can help each other out, expand our reading list. And I look forward to some more reading and seeing you again soon. Take care, y'all.